Okay, so I have a story time, and this one is kind of long. If you need to get a refreshing beverage and a snack, go ahead and do so. I had a iced coffee as I read this. She says, if you share it in a video, please keep me anonymous. All names in the story are fake to protect their privacy. She says, I, 27-year-old woman, need advice regarding my friendship with my best friend, Amy. Some background on Amy. I've known her since we were 12. She grew up in a strict Indo-Guyanese household. Her use of social media was limited, and she was not allowed to interact with males who were not family. She grew up very sheltered, and for that reason, she can be naive about some aspects of life. She loves literature and writing. She's a sweetheart and an empathetic person. As of a few years ago, Amy was able to move out from her family home and currently lives on her own. She has a degree in nursing because her parents forced her to pursue that field, but now she is pursuing a degree in what she actually wants. I'm so proud of her. She visits her family on the weekends for the most part. She mentioned to me that she often feels lonely, but doesn't want to move back in with her parents because she doesn't feel like she can grow as a person under their roof. Amy has a traditional mindset in the sense that she didn't want to use social media or dating apps to find a boyfriend. She wanted to meet people in person and form a relationship organically. She believes in saving herself for marriage. After a few rejections from guys, she told me how she feels like she'll die an old cat lady without a husband and kids. I assured her that she's still young with her whole life ahead of her. Worrying about it so much would make her come off as desperate. I suggested that she go out more as she's a homebody. She could talk to her classmates, join a club, or even just explore in the neighborhood she lives in. She met Bruce, he's 48, at college. He was her professor at the time. After classes, they would talk about common interests on the way home. She developed feelings for him. I voiced that he is her professor and that she should mind the power dynamic. She decided to ask him out after the last day of classes. They met up at a restaurant and she confessed her feelings to him. He said he felt the same way and invited her to his home for the next weekend. I told her I was concerned about her going to visit a man she barely knew at his home 3 hours away, but she insisted that she knew him well and that she would be fine. Upon arriving at Bruce's home, he informed her he is married but separated from his wife and that he has 2 children. He explained that he wants to play the field right now and isn't interested in a committed relationship. Amy was heartbroken. She thought they were boyfriend and girlfriend. He responded with, "You must have had that conversation in your head without me." She decided to stay since she had traveled so far to see him. They ended up sleeping together. On her way home, she told me what happened and that she could imagine living with him already. She says she doesn't remember who she was without him. That was someone's car backfiring. I am outside making my videos. I reminded her of what he said and that he wasn't interested in a relationship. She was hopeful that maybe he would commit to her after the time they spent together. The next weekend, he showed up to spend the night at her apartment because he had an event to attend in her neighborhood. He bought her chocolates and said, "I'm yours." She interpreted this as him committing to her. Over the next couple of months, they'd spend basically every weekend with him. She'd spend every weekend with him. She would make plans with me or other friends and then cancel last minute to spend time with him. I tried to be understanding, as this was her first relationship and love can be an exciting feeling. I figured she'd be back to normal once the novelty of the relationship wore off. She stopped talking to me as much, but when she did, it was never to ask about how I was doing. She mostly talked about Bruce, and to be honest, she shared very intimate details about their ex life with him that I found unnecessary and gross. We'll say she was exploring quite a bit in the bedroom. Bruce requested that she get on birth control since he didn't want to use condoms. She obliged. I told her that as an adult, and even more so as a nurse, she should know that birth control won't protect against STDs and that she should rethink her choice. My advice fell on deaf ears. Amy got to meet Bruce's children. She described them as spoiled and rude. Watching Bruce be a dad turned her off. I reminded her that she would need to deal with his baggage if she continued to be with him. She has no children of her own. If she didn't want to, she always had the option to leave him, but she refused, thinking she could handle it. Bruce's birthday was a few months ago, and his children planned a birthday party. His friends and loved ones would be there. They did not invite Amy. Of course, she felt offended by this and asked Bruce if she could attend. He refused, saying he is not ready to introduce her to his friends yet. She felt that he was treating her as a side piece. She went on a trip with him recently. At this point, I had accepted she was in a new stage of her life and living it to the fullest. I always made it known that I didn't like the relationship, but that I would support her in whatever she chooses as long as she's happy. The trip didn't go well. She told me that he threw a temper tantrum at the airport. She was embarrassed, and when she asked him why he acted that way, he said, "What do you mean? I didn't do that." Upon arrival to the trip destination, they decided to go on a hike. He refused to follow the map, and they ended up getting lost. He threw another temper tantrum, and Amy walked away to give him space. She slipped and fell on her back, struggling to get up. He looked over her and said, "You're fine," and went back to looking at his phone for directions. She felt he was dismissive of her safety. At another point during their trip, he was fixated on his phone. He was responding to calls and texts from his wife and children. Amy felt he was putting more energy into them than into her and their getaway trip. He said he couldn't just ignore them. After a week, they flew back, and as she got to her apartment, she felt an overwhelming sense of loneliness. She messaged him, telling him how sad she felt, and he responded, "Ah, sucks. Drink a few beers." I reinforced to her why I didn't approve of the relationship. He is clearly showing her through his actions that he does not care about her the way she cares about him. She agreed and said she was going to break up with him when she saw him again in person. She lamented on how she'd be breaking his heart when she broke up with him. She felt he wouldn't be able to handle it given his trauma. Upon further inquiry, he supposedly told her that his wife was crazy and abusive. Maybe she really was, but I reasoned that Amy doesn't know that for sure since she's never met his wife or heard her side of the story. He could just be playing on Amy's empathetic nature to keep her around. I reminded her he never showed that much regard for her feelings, so he doesn't deserve the grace she's giving him. I hadn't seen Amy in person in months. She wanted to visit me and catch up. She acknowledged that she'd been neglecting the other relationships in her life. She wanted to rebuild her friendships and her relationship with her siblings. Her visit to my home had been the final straw for me. I didn't recognize her. She had lost a considerable amount of weight, and she was slim before. I was concerned for her health. She looked frail. She told me she hadn't been eating well because of the stress of her relationship with Bruce. While eating our takeout, she did ask how I was doing, but once again she brought up Bruce. She said to me, relationships aren't like they are in Disney or the movies. She said this like she had just realized this. I figured at our age, we would have already known this. She seemed distracted while she was at my house, like she was physically there, but not mentally. She kept glancing at her phone, too. She mentioned that her family met Bruce and that they did not approve of the relationship either. Her mother said he was too old for her and that he had a family of his own he could fall back on if they broke up. Her mother said Amy would have no one since she neglected the other relationships in her life, and they might not be forgiving. Amy's mother encouraged her to find a younger man without children so that she could build a life with instead of butting into an already established life. We planned for Amy to stay at my place from the afternoon to the evening, but instead she left 2 hours in to go to Bruce's house. Again, I tried to be understanding that perhaps the thought of breaking up with him was a lot for her and that's why she was preoccupied. I got a text from her the next day talking about the rough ex she had with him and how his 11-year-old son had hurt them. She wasn't embarrassed, but almost proud of it. She thought it was funny. I was downright disgusted and didn't respond to her. Right now, I have her in restricted mode where I don't get notifications of her messages and she can't see if I looked at them. She's an adult and she can make her own decisions, but as a friend, I worry. She's forcing a relationship into something it's not. Bruce made it clear he wasn't looking for anything serious, and she keeps pushing for a committed relationship. She's essentially losing herself from forcing something that is not there. What kind of friend would I be to abandon her when she might really need me? Perhaps not now, but maybe down the line. Do I let her go as a friend? I can only take so much of her crying over issues she caused herself. What kind of person would I be to myself to put up with a friend who has shown me her priorities lie elsewhere? And that's the end. Sorry, it's so long. So, in this current iteration, they are 27 years old, and this is her first relationship. So, she is doing what many of us have done. I'm going to be honest, many of us have dropped everything to get involved with a man to the point where there's absolutely no balance. And so, it seems like this particular friend knows and understands that dynamics of a first love. But she also understands that she deserves to have a friend that is there for her, and she's not getting it from her friend Amy. What I would say to this is number one, she communicated with her about her friend in this relationship and how she sees that it is not healthy and is out of whack. So she communicated it. She has created some boundaries as far as putting her own restriction. All she can do at this particular point is hold space for her on down the line. This friend Amy is going to fall on her butt. She's going to have her heart broken. Bruce has already told her. He told her in the beginning that he's not looking for a relationship, and he's told her with his actions that he is not into her. The fact that there is a 20-year age gap is already disconcerting. This man is old enough to be her dad, and she is with him. She's going to have to learn the hard way. So if this particular friend leaves space and grace for the fact that this is a, young love, because it is young love, even though she's not young, they can rebuild their friendship. But Amy is going to have to put in that work to rebuild what she has let go. I know many of us have been in this position before. So that is the reason why we should have some grace for Amy. But by the same token, you deserve to have a friend that is there for you and supportive and loving you the way you support them. Always remember to pour into the people who have poured into you. That goes for friendships as well as romantic relationships and familial relationships. All right, y'all join the conversation. Let me know what you think. Like, comment, and share.